We have some potentially big breaking news from the NHL. Frank Seravalli has just broken a story that apparently the Edmonton Oilers are under investigation for their LTIR use of Evander Kane this past year. We'll discuss the story, what could happen, and what we know coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a fairly big, well, at least potentially big, developing story here tonight. We just got a news story, a new breaking news piece here from Frank Seravalli at dailyfaceoff.com indicating that the Edmonton Oilers apparently are being investigated by the NHL because of their use of the LTIR of Evander Kane throughout this past season. Now, of course, we know at this point the season's over. The Oilers lost in Game 6 last night. The Panthers won the Stanley Cup. And it's kind of hard to imagine that after all this time that they're still looking into an LTIR usage from this past season. But that appears to be where things are at. Of course, in case you're not familiar with the whole story, the whole scoop here, essentially Evander Kane missed the entire regular season. He returned in the first round of the playoffs in game number 2 against the Los Angeles Kings. Now, back in last fall in September, Evander Kane had a major, like a really big surgery, which had him getting repairs for 2 torn hip adductor muscles. There was also 2 hernias and 2 torn lower abdominal muscles. So it was a major surgery, and he was expected to be out till the approximate timeline had him returning somewhere around the end of March. So there was potential for him to, I guess, maybe return with a little bit of regular season time left, but of course that's just an estimate. Now, of course, partway through this recovery and the rehab from this, in January, Evander Kane then ended up having another surgery, this one to repair knee. He had a knee surgery, which caused him to pause his rehab for the other stuff for several weeks. So that ended up pushing his recovery out, and then we found out near the trade deadline that there was no chance Evander Kane was going to be able to make it back during the regular season, and that he was going to hopefully be an option for the playoffs. So the Oilers did not spend his money on LTIR through a majority of the campaign. In fact, if they kind of knew that he was heading down this road, and they kind of did, but if they wanted to be a little bit more aggressive last year when they were faced with the offer sheet situation with Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg, they could have matched those contract offers and kept those players and ended up, placing Kane on LTIR to start the season. They would have been a lot tighter to the cap, but they could have theoretically done that, and they chose not to. They wanted the flexibility. They couldn't say for sure that Kane was going to be out for the entire season, so it wasn't until the trade deadline that they decided that they're going to go ahead and confirm that he is not going to be able to come back and make some moves. Even when they made the Trent Frederick trade, they ended up paying for double retention, which really knocked down his cap hit. And of course, he ended up being out as well, dealing with a high ankle sprain. But they didn't need to dip into LTIR to do the Frederick acquisition. But then later they acquired Jake Wallman, and then that's when they did go into LTIR usage for the Kane contract when Wallman was acquired. So they did end up using it once they knew for sure he wasn't making it back. So I'm not really sure at this point. All Frank is saying is that the league may require more information so that they can complete an investigation here and verify that the Oilers were CBA compliant, and they're still deliberating on this situation, and that if they determine that they feel any rules were broken or that they weren't compliant with the CBA rules, that retroactive punishment could be possible. I find this shocking considering where we're at in the season, and that, like I said, the playoffs are now done. What if they would have won the Stanley Cup and then this would have broken? Let's say that they ended up getting punished. What kind of precedent or black mark would that have left on their championship win? Just crazy to me that something like this would take this long, considering how long the playoffs are played over. You would think that with the rules and how everything would work, that when a player is activated off LTIR, that the league would probably begin looking at that right away to make sure that there's no issues, that they weren't. But I mean, like, we've known that this has been an ongoing issue, not necessarily with this situation, but like around the league for many years. It's been exploited. Now, like I said, as much as some of us have been frustrated as fans over time, no team that we've really seen theoretically broke rules, right? There's a lot of talk lately that with the new CBA coming up, and then the new CBA rules very well could be announced here in the next few weeks, because we know negotiations are ongoing and they're close to getting a new deal in place. In the next couple of weeks is likely if everything goes well, when we could see an announcement of that being done. And it's expected that there's going to be some sort of amendment to LTIR, or to have some sort of playoff salary cap, or there's going to be something to address this situation. So to me, is this a case where the league really just wants create a scenario where they're going to hand out a punishment so that they can say, okay, well, we have a problem and here's how we're going to solve it? Is this like a order out of chaos type of thing? I don't know. It just seems weird. The timing of it, especially weird. But, I don't know. But we've seen, look at all the other cases we've seen. When the Lightning were winning the Stanley Cup a few years back, Nikita Kucherov was flaunting the fact he had a t-shirt made that said that, I can't remember what the number was, like 14 million over the cap or 20 million or whatever the number was. I can't remember how far over the cap they were, but it was a big number. And he had it on a t-shirt flaunting it. Nothing was done about that. We've seen the annual Mark Stone go on LTIR to help Vegas on a couple of occasions. That happened a number of years. It didn't happen this past year, but it's happened a bunch of other times. Didn't see anything about that, And if he wasn't, Evander Kane wasn't the only situation in LTIR this year. I mean, look at Matthew Tkachuk, comes back in game 1. Now we know more about his injury. To be honest, he probably shouldn't have even been playing. That's a whole different issue. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it's possible that he might have been able to come back. I think they had a little bit better of a cap situation, so I don't really think there's any chance Florida could really be looked into. But still, we saw a scenario where he was, on LTIR for an extended time return for game 1, which seemed sketchy. Now we know more about the injury. So, not only is it not as sketchy now, but I wonder if it should have been playing at all. But we've seen, the point is we've seen a number of these scenarios. A lot of teams that went into the playoffs this year had a scenario where they had LTIR usage. Look at Gabe Landeskog in Colorado. Now, if anybody wants to debate that one or investigate that one, he had been out battling and rehabbing for 2 to 3 years. So, clearly multiple surgeries, all that rehab. Look how long he went from winning the Stanley Cup to not playing again until this year's playoffs. So, obviously, I don't really think there's any funny business going on with the Avalanche. But all these other scenarios that you would think might be more scrutinized than this one, and this is what we find out that the league is investigating. It just seems bizarre. The timing of it is weird. Like I said, I wonder if this is a case where are they looking for something to be able to say, hey, this is a problem now. We get enough pushback around the league. We need to figure out a way to solve this, and here's how we're going to do it with the new CBA. Or what is it? I would hope that any kind of punishment wouldn't be too overly severe if there is, because it doesn't sound like they've done anything wrong. Now, Sarah Valley's sources are telling him that from what he's heard from the Oilers' perspective, that they haven't broken any rules, and that at this point they're, I guess, pretty optimistic and pretty positive that nothing will come from it because they didn't do anything wrong. So if they didn't, then there shouldn't be a punishment. But I guess this is going to be an interesting story to follow here in the next number of weeks. The Oilers are in a very tight cap situation. Of course, we know Draisaitl's extension kicks in next year. They got to sign Bouchard. They're rumored to be working on a big extension with Trent Frederick. They're going to be in a very tight situation trying to navigate through what they do next with their team. If they get some kind of either cap penalty or something, I'm not sure what else you can do to them here. You can take a draft pick like you did to the Senators. It just doesn't make any sense at all. So we'll see what they do. Hopefully for the Oilers' sake, nothing comes from this. It sure doesn't look like anything was done wrong, but I guess the only part about this that I can see being somewhat questionable is the timing of his knee surgery. But I don't really, there's lots of things to that we don't know. I know sometimes if, based on doctors' recommendations, they're not going to recommend you have too many things repaired in surgical procedure at one time. You got to be able to recover and get certain places, be able to move and, do certain things. I don't know the timing of it might have seemed weird, and maybe that's what they're looking into. We'll find out, I guess, maybe as the story continues to develop. But I guess let me know. I'll link the story from Daily Faceoff in the pinned comment, so you can look at the full article here from Frank and see what's going on. Let me know what you think, and we'll talk more further in the comments. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.